Zachary Lawson had built his timber operation from nothing, and after 8 years of bruised knuckles and bitter winters, he could finally see the prosperity on the horizon. But prosperity meant nothing when half his crew had deserted him last week, after rumors spread that an orc war band was moving through the northern hills. The remaining men worked with axes that felt heavier each day, their eyes constantly darting toward the tree line as though every shadow might transform into something with tusks and green skin. Zachary understood their fear even as it frustrated him. He had fought orcs during his 3 years in the border militia, had seen what their warriors could do with crude weapons and raw fury. But he had also seen orc villages burning, orc children running, and the complicated truth that war made monsters of everyone. Now he stood in the sorting yard watching his skeleton crew separate logs by grade, knowing that without more hands he would lose the contract that was supposed to carry him through the next 5 years. The morning mist clung to the ground like something that refused to let go, and the autumn air smelled of sawdust and approaching rain. "Boss, we got someone at the gate," Thomas, his foreman, called from across the yard. The older man had a crossbow slung over his shoulder these days, same as most of the workers. Zachary turned to see a figure standing just outside the fence that enclosed the work area. A person bundled in a heavy cloak despite the mild weather, hood pulled low, posture suggesting either exhaustion or deliberate meekness. He walked over, his boots crunching on wood chips. As he approached, he noticed the hands first. Even wrapped in worn cloth, they were too large, the fingers too thick. The stance was wrong too, weight distributed like someone accustomed to fighting or heavy labor. His instincts, honed by militia training and years of managing rough men, told him this was not what it seemed. "Can I help you?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. The figure shifted, and even through the cloak he could see the breadth of shoulders, the height that spoke of orc blood. When the voice came, it was pitched higher than natural, strained. "Looking for work. Heard you might need hands." The accent was there too, the slight difference in how orcs shaped their words around tusks. Zachary glanced back at Thomas, who had his hand on the crossbow. Then he looked at the stranger again, really looked, and made a decision that his business partners would have called suicidal. "Pull back your hood." The figure went very still. Around the yard, the sounds of work had ceased. Zachary could feel eyes on them, could sense Thomas moving closer. "Please," the stranger said quietly. "I can work. I am strong. I will not cause trouble." "Hood back or move along," Zachary said, but he kept his voice level, not threatening. "I do not hire people whose faces I have not seen." A long pause. Then hands rose, trembling slightly, and pushed back the hood, green skin, darker than spring grass, lighter than pine. Small tusks protruding from her lower jaw, carefully filed down but still visible. Pointed ears pierced with simple copper rings. Eyes the color of amber, wide and frightened but meeting his directly. She was young, probably early 20s, with black hair braided tight against her skull in a style meant to take up less space, to be less noticeable. She was also, unmistakably, female. Zachary heard Thomas suck in a breath behind him, heard one of the other workers curse. The orc woman stood perfectly still, chin lifted despite the fear in her eyes, waiting for violence or rejection. He knew her the moment she looked up, not because he had seen her before, but because he recognized what she was: desperate, running, and willing to risk everything on the slim chance that a human might show mercy. "Name?" he asked. She blinked, clearly having expected a different response. "Kira." "Kira Ashcroft." "Ashcroft is not an orc name." "It is the name I chose." Her jaw set stubbornly. "I can work all day. I can lift as much as any of your men, more probably. I do not eat much. You can pay me half what you pay them." Why are you here? He watched her carefully. Why not stay with your clan? Something flickered across her face, pain and anger mixed. I have no clan, not anymore. Thomas had moved close enough to speak quietly. Boss, you cannot be serious. The men will not work alongside her. The men will do what I pay them to do, Zachary said, not taking his eyes off Kira. Can you follow orders? Yes. Can you keep your head down and not cause problems? Yes. If someone gives you trouble, will you come to me instead of handling it yourself? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Zachary turned to Thomas. Put her on the sorting crew. She works the same hours, same pay as everyone else. Anyone who has a problem with that can collect their wages and leave. Thomas looked at him like he had lost his mind, but the foreman was loyal, and after a moment he nodded stiffly. Your funeral, boss. As Thomas led Kira away toward the sorting area, Zachary wondered if he had just made the stupidest decision of his life. Hiring an orc, especially a female one, was asking for trouble from every direction. If the wrong people heard about it, he could lose more than his crew. He could lose everything. But something about the way she had stood there, terrified but refusing to beg, had struck a chord in him. He remembered being 22, fresh out of the militia, trying to start a business with nothing but borrowed tools and stubborn pride. He remembered how many people had refused to take a chance on him. And he remembered, though he tried not to, the orc woman he had seen during the war. She had been standing in front of a burning hut, holding a child, and the look on her face had been exactly what he had just seen in Kira's eyes. His unit had ridden past without stopping, following orders, but that face had haunted him for years. The morning moved slowly. Zachary tried to focus on his usual work, checking inventory and reviewing the week's cutting schedule, but his attention kept drifting to the sorting yard. Kira had been given heavy gloves and a position at one of the sorting tables. Her job was simple. Take logs from the incoming pile, check them for knots and damage, then roll them to the appropriate stack based on quality. She worked with her hood back up, head down, moving with efficiency that spoke of experience with manual labor. She was stronger than she looked, which meant she was phenomenally strong, handling logs that took 2 human workers to lift. But she worked carefully, as though afraid of drawing attention to herself. By midday, 2 workers had already quit. Not working with no orc, Marcus announced, throwing down his tools. Do not care what you pay. My wife hears about this, she will have my head. Zachary paid him his wages without argument and watched him storm off. The second man, a newer hire named Pete, followed an hour later with similar sentiments. That left him with Thomas, 3 other workers, and Kira. He called a break for lunch and watched how the dynamics played out. The remaining workers sat together in a tight group, talking in low voices and occasionally glancing toward where Kira sat alone by the fence, eating something from a small cloth bundle. She did not look at them, just ate methodically and stared at the ground. Zachary grabbed his own lunch and walked over to her. She looked up as his shadow fell across her, eyes wary. Mind if I sit? She shrugged, which he took as permission. He lowered himself to the ground a few feet away, unwrapping the bread and cheese his housekeeper had packed. You have done this kind of work before, he observed. Some. Worked on a farm for a while, did hauling and loading. Where? She glanced at him. Does it matter? Just making conversation. They ate in silence for a few moments. Zachary could feel the weight of his crew's stares, could practically hear the gossip that would spread through the nearby settlements by nightfall. Zachary Lawson hired an orc. Zachary Lawson gone mad. Zachary Lawson asking for trouble. Why did you help me? Kira asked suddenly. Humans do not help orcs. Some humans do not, he corrected. And I did not hire you out of charity. I need workers. You need workers who will not make your other workers quit. I need workers who can do the job. He took a bite of bread, chewed, swallowed. The rest will sort itself out. She looked at him with those amber eyes, searching for something. You are either very kind or very stupid. Probably both, he admitted, and was surprised when the corner of her mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. The afternoon was better than the morning in that no one else quit, but worse in that the tension grew thicker. The remaining workers gave Kira a wide berth, and she responded by working twice as hard as necessary, as though she could earn acceptance through sheer effort. Zachary wanted to tell her it did not work that way, but he did not know what else to suggest. Near the end of the workday, one of the logs shifted wrong in a pile and came rolling toward where young Daniel was standing, distracted by something in his hand. The kid was 18, strong but not bright, and he did not see the several hundred-pound log bearing down on him. Kira moved like lightning. She dropped what she was holding and covered the distance in 3 long strides, grabbing Daniel and yanking him backward just as the log crashed through where he had been standing. They both went down in a heap, Daniel yelping in surprise, the log embedding itself in the soft earth with a heavy thud. Silence fell across the yard. Daniel scrambled up, face pale, staring at the log and then at Kira, who was getting to her feet more slowly. Her hood had fallen back again during the rescue, revealing her face fully in the afternoon light. "You saved me," Daniel said stupidly. Kira dusted off her pants, not meeting anyone's eyes. "You should watch better." Thank you, I mean it. That thing would have crushed me." She nodded once, then pulled her hood back up and returned to her station. Zachary watched the crew exchange glances, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. It was one thing to hate orcs in abstract. It was another to hate one who had just saved your friend's life. That night, after the crew had gone home and Kira stood awkwardly by the gate clearly unsure where to go, Zachary made another decision he would probably regret. "There is a bunkhouse out back," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it is warm and dry. You can stay there. I have no money for rent." Did not ask for any. Part of the job. He started walking, not waiting to see if she would follow. "Come on, I will show you." The bunkhouse was a long, low building that had housed workers in the early days, before most of his crew had gotten established enough to rent rooms in town. It was empty now except for dust and spiders, but the roof was sound and there were 6 solid bunks with decent mattresses. "Take your pick," Zachary said, lighting a lantern. "There is a pump outside for water and the privy is behind that stand of trees. I will have someone bring you blankets." Kira stood in the doorway, looking around with an expression he could not quite read. "Why are you doing this? Told you, I need workers." "No one needs workers this badly." Zachary turned to face her fully. 8 years ago, I came back from the militia with nothing. No land, no money, no prospects. Every bank in 3 counties turned me down for a loan. Every investor said I was too young, too inexperienced, too risky. Finally, an old man named Graham Lawson took a chance on me, loaned me enough to buy my first saw and team. He died 5 years ago, but I would not be here without him. He paused. So maybe I believe in taking chances on people who need them. Or maybe I am just stupid, like you said. Either way, you have a place to sleep tonight. He left before she could respond, walking back to his own house through the gathering dark. The house was bigger than he needed, built with the profits from his 3rd year in business when he had been optimistic about his future. He had imagined filling it with a family someday, a wife and children, and the comfortable chaos of domestic life. But the women in town looked at him strangely when he turned down opportunities to join the hunting parties that sometimes chased down orc scouts, when he refused to share in the casual hatred that seemed to bond other men together. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had left dinner warming by the fire. She was a widow from 2 settlements over who came 3 days a week to cook and clean, and she had a talent for not asking questions. He ate alone, as he usually did, then carried a stack of blankets out to the bunkhouse. Kira was sitting on one of the lower bunks, still in her cloak, staring at her hands. She looked up when he entered, and he saw that her eyes were wet. "Blankets," he said gruffly, setting them down. "Gets cold at night this time of year." "Thank you," she whispered. He should have left. Should have maintained professional distance. Instead, he found himself sitting on the bunk across from her, tired of pretending he did not see her pain. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "Why did you leave your clan?" For a long moment he thought she would not answer. Then slowly she spoke. "I am half-breed. My mother was orc, my father was human. He was a trader who came through our territory. She loved him, I think, or thought she did. When I was born, the clan elders said I was abomination. Weak blood. My mother fought to keep me, raised me alone on the edges of the clan. She died 2 months ago. Fever. After that, there was no reason for them to let me stay." Her jaw tightened. "They gave me 3 days to leave. Said if I was seen again, they would kill me as they should have when I was born." Zachary felt anger kindle in his chest. "Your own people did that." "They are not my people. I am not orc enough for orcs, not human enough for humans." She looked at him with something like challenge in her eyes. "I am nothing." "You are not nothing," he said firmly. "You are someone who works hard and saves lives and deserves better than what you have gotten." She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "You do not know me. I know enough." They sat in silence for a while, the lamplight casting shifting shadows on the walls. Finally, Zachary stood. "Get some rest. Work starts at dawn." As he reached the door, her voice stopped him. "Zachary." It was the first time she had used his name. He turned back. "Thank you." "Really?" He nodded and left, walking back through the dark with a strange feeling in his chest. It was not attraction, he told himself. He was not fool enough to develop feelings for an orc woman, half-breed or not. He was just doing the right thing. That was all. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he kept seeing those amber eyes and wondering what he had gotten himself into. The next week settled into an uneasy rhythm. Kira worked harder than anyone else, arriving before dawn and staying until the last log was sorted. The crew maintained their distance, but after Daniel's rescue they stopped actively glaring at her. It was not acceptance, but it was not open hostility either. Zachary found himself watching her more than he should. Noticed the way she moved with unconscious grace despite her size. Noticed that she never complained, never slacked, never did anything that might draw negative attention. She ate alone, worked alone, and disappeared into the bunkhouse each night as soon as she was dismissed. On the 8th day, Thomas approached him with a concerned expression. "Boss, we need to talk about the orc." Zachary set down his pencil. "Her name is Kira." "Fine, Kira. The thing is, people are talking. Word has gotten around that you hired her, and some folks are not happy about it." "What people?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Calvin Reed came by yesterday while you were in town. Said some of the local farmers are worried. Orcs this close to the settlements. It makes them nervous." Calvin Reed owned the largest farm in the area and considered himself some sort of unofficial leader. Zachary had never liked him, mostly because Calvin treated anyone he considered beneath him like dirt. "Kira is one person, not an invasion force," Zachary said, "and she is working for me on my land. What I do here is none of Calvin's business. He said if you do not get rid of her, there might be trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Thomas met his eyes. "The kind with torches and angry men." "He has been stirring people up, talking about how dangerous it is to let orcs get established. Says today it is one orc working in a timber yard. Tomorrow it is orc settlements on human land." Zachary swore under his breath. He had expected resistance, but not this quickly and not this organized. What do you think I should do? Honest answer. I think you should let her go before this gets out of hand. Thomas held up a hand before Zachary could protest. I am not saying she is bad or dangerous. She is a good worker, maybe the best we have. But is she worth losing everything over? Because that is what is at stake here. I will not fire someone because a bunch of scared farmers cannot see past their prejudices. Then you better be ready for a fight, Thomas said grimly, because it is coming whether you want it or not. That evening, after the crew left, Zachary found Kira checking the fence line on the eastern edge of the property. She did this most nights, he had noticed, as though she could not quite believe in the safety of walls and felt compelled to check for threats. We need to talk, he said. She turned and he saw wariness flood her features. I did something wrong. No, but there are people who are not happy about you being here. They might try to cause problems. Then I will leave. She said it flatly, as though it were inevitable. I do not want trouble for you. I am not asking you to leave. I am telling you to be careful. Do not go into town. Do not go anywhere alone. If anyone approaches you when I am not around, you come find me immediately. She studied him with those two perceptive eyes. You could avoid all this by sending me away. I could, he agreed, but I am not going to. Why not? It was a good question. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to pay her for her time and send her on her way. He owed her nothing beyond a fair wage for honest work. Getting involved in her troubles was not his responsibility. But when he looked at her, he did not see an orc or a half-breed or a problem to be solved. He saw someone who had been kicked down her entire life and was still standing. Someone who worked without complaint and saved lives and never asked for more than she deserved. Someone who made him think that maybe there was more to the world than the narrow definitions of us and them that he had been taught. Because it is the right thing to do, he said finally, and because I am tired of letting fear make my decisions. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes. You are a strange human, Zachary Lawson. I have been told that before. She smiled then, really smiled, and he was startled by how it transformed her face. For just a moment she looked younger, lighter, like someone who had not spent her whole life braced for the next blow. The moment passed. Her smile faded and the walls came back up. But something had changed between them. Some line crossed that neither of them had intended. Zachary lay awake again that night, thinking about Kira, about the decisions he had made and the ones he would have to make, about the way his heart had jumped when she smiled. This was dangerous territory. He knew that. Humans and orcs did not mix, and people who tried faced consequences from both sides. Even if Kira felt something for him, which she almost certainly did not, pursuing it would be madness. But lying there in the dark, listening to the wind in the trees, he could not quite convince himself to stop wanting to. The trouble came 3 days later, though not in the form Zachary had expected. He was working in the equipment shed, sharpening saw blades, when he heard raised voices from the yard. He emerged to find 5 men on horseback at the gate. Calvin Reed sat at their center, and the others were local farmers Zachary recognized. Lawson, Calvin called. Need a word. Zachary walked over slowly, aware that his crew had stopped working and that Kira had gone very still at her sorting table. Calvin, what can I do for you? Heard you got yourself an orc worker. Wanted to see if the rumors were true. Calvin's eyes found Kira and narrowed. Looks like they are. I have several workers. What business is it of yours? It is everyone's business when you bring danger this close to the settlements. We have families to think about. Children. You cannot just invite orcs onto human land and expect people to be fine with it. Kira is one person, working a legal job for fair wages. She has not hurt anyone or caused any trouble. Yet, one of the other men said. But orcs are savage by nature. It is only a matter of time before she shows her true colors. Zachary felt his temper rising. The only savagery I see right now is 5 armed men trying to intimidate a lone woman who has done nothing wrong. Calvin's expression hardened. Watch yourself, Lawson. We are trying to be reasonable here. All we are asking is that you send the orc away. Do that, and there is no problem. And if I do not, then we will have to assume you are not acting in the best interests of the community, which means the community might have to take steps to protect itself. It was a clear threat, barely veiled. Zachary's hand moved instinctively toward the knife at his belt, but he forced himself to stay calm. Starting a fight would only make things worse. I appreciate your concern, he said with forced politeness, but I make my own decisions about my business. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do. He turned his back on them, which was either brave or stupid, and walked toward the sorting area. After a moment he heard the horses moving away, but Calvin's voice carried back. You have got 3 days to change your mind, Lawson. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety or your property. When they were gone, Zachary found Kira standing rigid, fists clenched at her sides. I am leaving, she said. Tonight. No, you are not. Did you not hear him? They will come back. They will hurt you, burn your business. I cannot. They will not do anything, Zachary interrupted, though he was not sure he believed it. Calvin is all bluster. He wants to scare me into doing what he wants. And if he is not bluffing, Zachary met her eyes, then we will deal with it together. Why? The word burst from her like something too long contained. Why are you doing this? I am nothing to you. Just some orc you hired 2 weeks ago. Why would you risk everything for me? It was the question he had been asking himself. The one he did not have a good answer for, or at least not one he was ready to admit. Because I have seen what happens when good people stay silent, he said finally. I spent 3 years in the militia, following orders, doing what I was told was necessary, and some of those things, they were not right. They were not justified. We burned orc villages because we were afraid. We killed orc civilians because we were told they were all dangerous. I watched men who should have known better turn into monsters because it was easier than questioning what we were doing. He looked away, old shame rising up. When I got out, I promised myself I would not be that person anymore. I would not let fear or hate make my choices. So when you showed up looking for work, I saw a chance to actually live by that promise instead of just telling myself pretty lies. He looked back at her. So that is why, because I am trying to be better than I was. Kira stared at him, something complicated moving behind her eyes. Then, to his utter shock, she closed the distance between them and hugged him. It was brief and awkward, her arms coming around him for just a moment before she stepped back quickly, looking embarrassed. But in that instant, he caught the scent of her, something like pine and leather, and felt the solid warmth of her against him. Thank you, she said quietly. No one has ever. She did not finish, but she did not need to. He understood. That night, Zachary reinforced the locks on the gates and made sure all his tools were accounted for. Thomas had offered to stay and keep watch, and 2 of the other workers had volunteered as well. They set up a rotating schedule, 2 people awake at all times, with clear lines of sight to all the entrances. You really think they will try something? Daniel asked nervously. The kid had been the most sympathetic to Kira since she saved his life. I think Calvin is the kind of man who does not like being told no, Zachary said. So we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. The first night passed quietly, same with the second. Zachary started to think maybe Calvin had been bluffing after all, that the threat had been meant to scare rather than a genuine promise of violence. He should have known better. On the 3rd night, Zachary was jerked awake by the sound of breaking glass. He bolted upright, heart hammering, and smelled smoke. He was dressed and out the door in seconds, racing toward the source of the fire. The equipment shed was blazing, flames already climbing the walls. He saw Thomas and Marcus running with buckets, saw Daniel beating at sparks that had jumped to the fence, and he saw figures on horseback at the edge of the property, dark shapes against the darker night, watching. "Get water," he shouted, grabbing a bucket himself. "Do not let it spread." They fought the fire for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. By the time they got it under control, the shed was a total loss and 3 sections of fence were badly damaged. But it could have been worse. If the wind had been stronger, if the flames had reached the lumber stocks, he could have lost everything. As it was, he had lost several thousand gold in tools and equipment. The riders were gone by the time he looked again, melted back into the darkness like the cowards they were. Zachary stood panting, covered in soot and ash, and felt cold rage settle into his bones. "Boss," Thomas approached carefully. "You okay?" "No," Zachary said flatly. "Where is Kira?" "Bunk house, I think. I did not see her." Zachary was already moving. He crossed the yard at a run, fear suddenly gripping him. What if the fire had been a distraction? What if they had gone after her while everyone was busy? The bunkhouse door was standing open. He burst through and found the interior ransacked, bunks overturned, Kira's few possessions scattered across the floor, and a message scrawled on the wall in white paint. "Last warning. Kira." He checked every corner, every shadow. She was not there. He ran back outside, shouting her name. Thomas and the others joined in, spreading out across the property. Minutes stretched like hours. His mind conjured terrible images, Kira hurt or captured or worse. Then Daniel called from the tree line. "Found her." Zachary ran. He found Kira crouched in the underbrush about 50 yards beyond the fence, a heavy branch clutched in her hands like a weapon. Her eyes were wild, her breathing harsh. "Kira," he said carefully. "It is me. It is Zachary." She stared at him for a long moment, then seemed to recognize him. The branch lowered. "They came for me, I know, but they are gone now. You are safe." "Safe," she laughed bitterly. "Nowhere is safe, not for me." He moved closer slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. "Come back to the house. We will figure this out. I should go. This is my fault. If you leave, they win. And I do not let bullies win." He held out his hand. She looked at it for a long time, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes, the part of her that wanted to believe warring with the part that had been hurt too many times to trust. Finally, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her skin was rough with calluses, her grip strong enough to hurt if she wanted, but her hand trembled slightly as he helped her to her feet. They walked back together, still holding hands, and Zachary realized he did not want to let go. The aftermath of the fire changed things. The crew, perhaps inspired by the sheer brazenness of the attack, closed ranks. If Calvin and his thugs thought they could intimidate them into abandoning Kira, they had badly miscalculated. Thomas started staying overnight in the bunkhouse with Kira, and the others took shifts keeping watch. Zachary filed a report with the local magistrate, though he had little hope it would lead anywhere. Calvin had enough influence to avoid consequences for something like this, especially since there were no witnesses willing to testify. In the meantime, he moved Kira into his house. "Just until we can rebuild the bunkhouse," he told himself, "and because it is safer if she is close." He gave her the guest room upstairs, a space that had never been used since he had no guests. Mrs. Chen raised her eyebrows when she came to cook the next day and found Kira sitting awkwardly at the kitchen table, but the old woman said nothing. Living in close quarters with Kira was an education. He learned that she sang quietly to herself when she thought no one could hear, old orc songs in a language he did not know. He learned that she was meticulous about cleaning up after herself, as though afraid of taking up too much space. He learned that she had nightmares sometimes, waking with gasps that she tried to muffle. On the fourth night after she moved in, he woke to the sound of movement downstairs. He found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea, staring out the window. "Could not sleep?" he asked. She glanced at him. "Did I wake you?" "I am sorry, you did not. I am a light sleeper." He poured himself tea and sat across from her. "Want to talk about it?" "About what?" "Whatever has you up at 2 in the morning looking like the world is ending." She was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about my mother, about what she would think if she could see me now." "What would she think?" "I do not know. She spent her whole life trying to make a place for me, for us, in the clan. She believed if I was strong enough, good enough, they would accept me eventually. She died still believing that." Kira's jaw tightened. "I wonder if she would see me working for humans as betrayal, like I gave up on being orc. Or maybe she would see you surviving," Zachary suggested, "making your own place in the world when the one she wanted for you was not possible. Maybe." She did not sound convinced. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking tea and listening to the night sounds through the window. Zachary found himself studying her face in the lamplight, tracing the line of her jaw, the curve of her tusks, the way her ears came to subtle points. She was beautiful. The thought surfaced before he could stop it, not despite being an orc but including all of what she was, the strength in her features, the careful intelligence in her eyes, the way she carried herself with unconscious grace. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "That day you came looking for work. If I had turned you away, what would you have done?" She met his eyes. "Kept walking until I found someone who would take a chance, or until I ran out of places to walk. And then nothing. I would have figured something out, or I would not have." "Does not matter now. It matters to me." The words hung between them, heavier than he had intended. Kira set down her cup carefully. "Why does it matter?" "Because I care about you," he thought. "Because the idea of you alone and desperate makes my chest ache. Because somewhere in the last few weeks you stopped being just a worker and became someone I cannot imagine not having around." But he could not say any of that, could not cross that line, so he deflected. "Because everyone should have someone who cares whether they are okay. That is all." She looked at him for a long moment, and he had the uncomfortable feeling she saw right through his evasion. But she let it pass. "Well, thank you for being that someone, even if you did not sign up for it." "I think I did, actually. The moment I told you to pull back your hood." Her smile was small but genuine. "Maybe you did." They finished their tea and returned to their respective rooms, but Zachary lay awake for a long time after, thinking about the conversation, about the careful distance they were trying to maintain and how it felt more fragile every day. The weeks passed and autumn deepened into early winter. The work continued, complicated by cold rains and the first threats of snow. Zachary lost some contracts due to the fire, clients who did not want to be associated with someone who was causing controversy, but others stayed loyal. It would be a tighter year than he had hoped, but he would survive. Kira had become indispensable. She worked harder than anyone else, never complained about the cold or the wet, and had a natural aptitude for the business that surprised him. She started making suggestions about workflow and safety improvements, small things that made significant differences. The crew, seeing her value, gradually shifted from tolerance to acceptance, and through it all, Zachary found himself falling. It was not dramatic or sudden, just a slow accumulation of moments. The way she laughed at Thomas's terrible jokes, the way she was endlessly patient teaching Daniel proper technique, the way she looked at Zachary when she thought he was not watching, with something soft and wondering in her eyes. They had fallen into an evening routine. After work, they would share dinner at his house, either Mrs. Chen's cooking or something simple they prepared together. Then they would sit by the fire, talking about the day or sometimes about nothing at all. Those hours became the part of the day he looked forward to most. "You know what is strange?" Kira said one evening, stretched out in the chair across from him. "I am happier now than I have ever been, despite everything, despite Calvin and the fire and all the ways this could go wrong." She looked at him. "Why is that?" "Maybe because you are choosing your own path for the first time," he suggested. "Not trying to fit into someone else's definition of where you belong. Maybe, or maybe it is because of you." The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Zachary's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Kira." "I know," she said quickly. "I know we cannot, that it would be stupid and dangerous and probably end badly for both of us. I know all of that. But I need you to know anyway, that you have given me more than just work and shelter. You have given me a reason to believe the world is not entirely terrible, and I—" She stopped, struggling with the words. Zachary waited, barely breathing. "I think I am falling in love with you," she finished quietly. "And I am sorry. I know that is not what you wanted, but I could not keep pretending. The smart thing would be to shut this down, to explain gently but firmly why it could never work, to maintain the boundaries that kept them both safe." Zachary did not do the smart thing. He stood and crossed to her chair, kneeling so they were at eye level. Her eyes went wide, uncertain. "You are not alone in this," he said. "I have been fighting it for weeks, telling myself all the reasons it is impossible. But the truth is I have not thought about anything but you since the day you showed up. You are brave and strong and kind, and you make me want to be better. And yes, I am falling in love with you too. Zachary." His name was a whisper. "But you are right that this is dangerous," he continued. "If people find out, it will not just be vandalism and threats. We could both end up dead. Your people will see you as a traitor. Mine will see me as corrupted. There is no version of this where we do not face consequences. I know. So we have to decide if it is worth it, if what we feel is strong enough to risk everything." Kira reached out and cupped his face with one large hand, her thumb tracing his cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "I spent my whole life being what other people needed me to be. Orc enough to not shame my mother. Quiet enough to not anger the clan. Small enough to not threaten humans. I am so tired of it. For once, just once, I want to be selfish. I want to choose what I want, consequences be damned." "And what do you want? This. Whatever time we can steal before the world tears it away." Zachary turned his head and kissed her palm. Then he stood, drawing her up with him, and kissed her properly. Her tusks made the angle slightly awkward, but they adjusted. Her lips were softer than he expected, her arms coming around him with careful strength. She kissed like she was afraid he might disappear, like she was trying to memorize the moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "We will have to be careful, I know. And there are no guarantees. This might all fall apart. I know that too. But I am not willing to give you up without trying." She smiled against his mouth. "Good, because neither am I." They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the firelight, and for that moment the world beyond his walls did not matter. There was only this, only them, and the choice they had made to reach for something beautiful despite the cost. The winter deepened, and with it their relationship. They kept it quiet, painfully aware of the danger exposure would bring. To the crew and the outside world they maintained their professional distance, but in the privacy of his house they were simply Zachary and Kira, two people learning how to be together. He learned that she was ticklish on the backs of her arms. that she loved snow, the first she had ever seen, and would stand outside with her face turned up to catch flakes on her tongue. That she had a wicked sense of humor and a surprisingly refined appreciation for poetry. She learned that he was an early riser who got grumpy without coffee, that he had a scar on his shoulder from a training accident in the militia, that he sometimes woke from nightmares about the war, though he rarely talked about them. They learned each other, carefully and thoroughly, navigating the complexities of different bodies and different needs with patience and humor. Their first time making love was awkward and sweet, fumbling in the dark and laughing at their mutual nervousness. The second time was better. The third time was extraordinary. "I never thought I would have this," Kira whispered one night, curled against his side. "Someone who sees me as something other than a mistake or a monster." "You were never either of those things," Zachary said firmly. "The people who made you feel that way were wrong. Easy to say now, when I am warm and safe and happy, but I spent 23 years being told otherwise. Those voices do not just disappear. No, but maybe over time they get quieter, replaced by better ones." She kissed his shoulder. "You are one of the better ones. So are you." They existed in a bubble, fragile and beautiful, and Zachary tried not to think about how easily it could burst, tried not to think about Calvin's threats or the prejudices that surrounded them, tried to simply be present in the moments they had. But reality has a way of intruding, no matter how much you try to ignore it. The trouble came on a clear, cold day in midwinter. Zachary was in town buying supplies when he ran into Calvin at the general store. The older man looked him up and down with contempt. "Still keeping that orc pet of yours?" Calvin asked loudly enough for everyone in the store to hear. Zachary kept his voice level. "Still employing Kira, yes. She is an excellent worker." "Bet she is. Heard you moved her into your house too. People are talking, Lawson." "People should mind their own business." Calvin stepped closer, lowering his voice to something more threatening. "You think you are better than the rest of us. Think you can just ignore the rules that keep us safe. I think there is a difference between rules and prejudice. Call it what you want, but mark my words, this is going to end badly for you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it does, do not say you were not warned." He brushed past Zachary and left. The store owner, Mr. Harrison, gave Zachary a sympathetic look. "He has been working people up," Harrison said quietly. "Talking about orc infiltrators and the danger to the community. Most people do not believe him, but some do." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that you should watch your back. Calvin has friends, and some of them are not above violence if they think it is justified." Zachary paid for his supplies and headed home, unease coiling in his gut. He had known this was coming, had tried to prepare for it. But knowing something intellectually and facing it practically were different things. He found Kira in the equipment shed, repairing a saw blade. She looked up as he entered, and her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" He told her about the encounter with Calvin. She listened in silence, her face growing more guarded with each word. "He is right," she said when he finished. "This is going to end badly. It always does. Not if we are smart about it. Zachary, there is no version of smart that makes this okay. We are an orc and a human in a relationship. That is not something most people can overlook, no matter how careful we are." "So what are you saying? That we should end this?" She looked away. "Maybe it would be better, for both of us. You could go back to your life, rebuild your reputation. I could move on before I cause you more damage." "Is that what you want?" "No, but what I want has never mattered much in the grand scheme of things." Zachary crossed to her and tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. "It matters to me. You matter to me, and I am not giving up on this just because it is hard." "It is not hard, it is impossible." "Then we will do the impossible, together." She searched his face looking for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she leaned in and kissed him hard. When they broke apart, her eyes were wet. "You are either the bravest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Why not both?" she laughed despite herself. "Why not both?" They tried to continue as normal, but the tension grew. Zachary noticed more people watching when he went to town. Noticed conversations stopping when he entered rooms. Thomas reported that some of the other timber operations were spreading rumors, trying to poach his clients by suggesting his business was too unstable to rely on. Through it all, Kira remained steady. She worked, she supported him, she refused to let the hatred of strangers make her small again. And Zachary loved her more with each passing day. "I have been thinking," he said one night. "What if we left?" Kira looked up from the book she was reading. "Left the area. We could go north, up to the frontier territories. Places where people are too busy surviving to worry about who is human and who is orc. Start fresh somewhere we are not known. You would give up everything you have built, your business, your home." "I would give up anything if it meant being with you openly." She set down her book and came to sit beside him. "That is sweet and tempting, but running does not solve the problem. There will always be people like Calvin, no matter where we go. And I do not want you to resent me in 10 years for making you abandon your life." "I would never resent you. You say that now, but this is your home. You built something here. I will not be the reason you lose it." He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Then we stay and we fight." "Fight how?" "By being exactly what we are, by not hiding or apologizing, by showing everyone that what we have is real and worth protecting." She squeezed his hand. "That is a beautiful idea, but beautiful ideas do not stop angry men with torches." "No, but they are a start." They sat together in the firelight, neither speaking, both thinking. And Zachary wondered if love was always this complicated, this fraught with impossible choices, or if they were just unlucky enough to have found each other in a world that was not ready for them. The crisis came 3 weeks later. Zachary was reviewing accounts in his study when he heard shouting from outside. He reached the window in time to see a group of about 20 men approaching his property, torches in hand. Calvin was at their front and several others were armed. His blood went cold. This was not a warning. This was a mob. He ran downstairs, shouting for Kira. She emerged from the kitchen, took one look at his face and understood immediately. "How many?" 20. Maybe more. "Kira, you need to hide." "Hide where?" "If they are determined, they will tear this place apart." "Then we run, out the back into the woods. I know places they cannot follow, and abandon your home. Let them burn everything." "I would rather lose the house than you." She grabbed his face in both hands. "Listen to me. I am not running anymore. I have spent my whole life running. If this is where it ends, then let it end. But I am not going to let you face them alone." "Kira, no. We do this together or not at all." The banging started at the front door, Calvin's voice amplified by anger and righteousness. "Lawson, we know you are in there. Send out the orc and we will leave your property intact." Zachary looked at Kira, saw the determination in her eyes, and made a decision. He took her hand and they walked to the front door together. He opened it, keeping himself partially in front of her. Calvin and his mob stood on the porch, torch light making their faces demonic. Behind them, Zachary could see more people gathering, some watching with concern, others with anticipation. "Evening, Calvin," Zachary said calmly. "What seems to be the problem?" "You know the problem. That thing behind you is a threat to every decent family in the area. We are here to remove it. Her name is Kira, and she is not going anywhere." "You are choosing an orc over your own people," one of the other men demanded. "Have you lost your mind?" "I am choosing the person I love over a bunch of scared bullies. If that makes me crazy, then I am crazy." The words fell into shocked silence. Kira's hand tightened on his, but she said nothing. Calvin recovered first. "You admit it. You have been consorting with that creature." "I admit that I love her, that she is kind and brave and makes me happier than I have ever been, that your hatred and fear do not get to dictate who I care about. This is an abomination. The only abomination I see is 20 grown men terrorizing one woman because they are too narrow-minded to see past her skin color." Someone in the crowd threw a rock. It sailed past Zachary's head and shattered a window. Kira moved, pulling him back, but he held his ground. "You cannot stop this, Lawson," Calvin said. "You are either with us or against us, and if you are against us, we will burn you out like the orc lover you are." "Then burn," Zachary said flatly, "but you will have to go through me first." He did not know if it would have been enough. Did not know if his defiance would have stopped them or just made them angrier. But before anyone could act, a new voice cut through the tension. "What the hell is going on here?" Everyone turned. Thomas stood at the edge of the crowd, flanked by Daniel and Marcus and the rest of the crew. They were armed with tools and axes, faces grim. "This is not your concern, Thomas," Calvin said. "Go home." "Like hell it is not my concern. Zachary is my boss and my friend. You want to get to him, you go through us first." "You would side with him, with an orc." "I side with people who have shown themselves to be decent and honest. Kira saved Daniel's life. She works harder than any of you, and she has not done a damn thing to deserve this." Thomas stepped forward. "So here is what is going to happen. You are going to take your mob and go home. And if you ever come back here making threats, we will see how tough you are when you are not fighting a bunch of unarmed people." The crowd shifted, uncertain. Some men moved toward Thomas and the crew. Others hesitated. Calvin looked around, clearly trying to gauge whether he still had enough support. Then more people emerged from the darkness. Mr. Harrison from the general store. Mrs. Chen, carrying a heavy cast iron pan. A handful of townspeople, some Zachary recognized and some he did not. "I will not stand by and watch this," Harrison said. "Whatever you think of Lawson's choices, mob violence is not the answer." "This is wrong," Mrs. Chen added, her accent thick with emotion. "I know what it is to be different, to be hated for things you cannot change. This is not who we are." The momentum shifted. The crowd, which had seemed unified in its anger, began to fragment. Some people drifted away, unwilling to be part of what was clearly becoming a failed mob. Others argued among themselves. Calvin's face reddened with fury. "You are all fools. When that orc shows her true nature, when she murders someone in their sleep or brings a war band down on us, do not come crying to me." "Kira has had months to show her true nature," Zachary said. "And all she has shown is kindness, hard work, and courage. The only people showing their true nature tonight are you and your mob." Calvin spat on the ground. "This is not over, Lawson." "I think it is," Thomas said quietly. "Look around. You do not have the numbers anymore, and I suspect after tonight you will not have much respect either." The crowd was definitely breaking up now, people heading back toward town or their farms. Within minutes, Calvin was left with only a handful of hardcore supporters. He glared at Zachary with pure hatred. "You will regret this." Then he turned and stalked away, his remaining followers trailing behind. Silence fell over the property, broken only by the crackling of the abandoned torches. Zachary let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His legs felt shaky, adrenaline draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. Kira was trembling beside him, still gripping his hand. Thomas approached, followed by the others. "You okay, boss? Thanks to you, all of you." Zachary looked around at the people who had stood up for them. "I do not know what to say." Say you will buy the first round when this all blows over, Marcus suggested with a weak grin. Done. And then some. Mrs. Chen came up and to everyone's surprise hugged Kira. You are good girl, she said fiercely. Do not let bad men tell you different. Kira looked stunned, but she carefully hugged the old woman back. Thank you. People lingered for a while, making sure the mob was really gone and that no more trouble was coming. Slowly they drifted away, offering words of support or just nods of acknowledgement. By the time the last person left, it was past midnight. Zachary closed the door and turned to find Kira staring at him. You told them, she said. You told everyone that you love me. I did. You realize what that means, what it will cost you. I realize it means I do not have to hide anymore. That whatever comes, we face it together as equals, and that is worth any cost. She crossed to him and kissed him with everything she had, and he kissed back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, she said. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too, and I am not afraid anymore. They held each other in the darkness, and Zachary felt something settle in his chest. The road ahead would not be easy. They would face more hatred, more obstacles. But they would face them together, and that made all the difference. The days following the confrontation were strange. Calvin and his core supporters made themselves scarce, clearly sulking over their failed mob. But the wider community's response was more complicated. Some people were openly supportive, stopping by to offer words of encouragement or making a point to be friendly when they saw Kira. Others were clearly uncomfortable but willing to give them a chance. And a few remained hostile, though they expressed it through cold shoulders rather than violence. It was not universal acceptance, but it was a beginning. Zachary's business actually improved. Apparently, word of his principled stand had spread, and some clients who valued integrity over prejudice sought him out. He landed 2 major contracts in the span of a week, more work than he could handle with his current crew. Going to have to hire more people, Thomas observed. Think any orcs are looking for work? Zachary threw a piece of bark at him, but he was grinning. Through it all, Kira seemed to grow lighter. The constant tension she had carried since he met her gradually eased. She smiled more, laughed more easily, moved through the world with less of the defensive crouch that had defined her before. One evening in early spring, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to him with a serious expression. I have been thinking about something. What is that? When I chose the name Ashcroft, I did it because I wanted something that sounded human. Something that would help me blend in, but I do not want to blend in anymore. I do not want to pretend to be something I am not. What do you want? She took a deep breath. I want to take your name if you will have me. Zachary's heart stuttered. Are you asking what I think you are asking? I am asking if you will marry me, Zachary Lawson. I know it is usually the man who asks, and I know we come from different worlds, and I know there are 1,000 reasons this is complicated. But I love you, and I want to build a life with you publicly and proudly. So, will you marry me? He could not speak for a moment, emotion choking his throat. Then he pulled her close and kissed her breathless. Yes, he said when he could talk again. Absolutely yes, she laughed, a sound of pure joy. Really? Did you think I would say no? Kira, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. I will marry you in front of the whole town if that is what it takes. I might hold you to that. Please do. They kissed again, longer this time, and when they broke apart the sun had set and stars were emerging overhead. Zachary looked up at them, thinking about paths and choices and the strange ways life could surprise you. A year ago, he had been a lonely businessman worried about his bottom line. Now he was engaged to an orc woman, publicly defying centuries of prejudice and happier than he had ever imagined possible. So, Kira said, her head on his shoulder. "How do humans usually do weddings?" "Honestly, I have no idea. I have been to a few but never paid much attention." "We will figure it out together then." "Together," he agreed. "I like the sound of that." Planning the wedding turned out to be both easier and harder than expected. Easier because they both wanted something simple and meaningful rather than elaborate. Harder because finding someone willing to officiate an interspecies marriage proved challenging. The local priest refused outright, citing religious law and tradition. 2 magistrates also declined, though more politely. Zachary was beginning to worry they would have to travel to another region when Mrs. Chen made a suggestion. "My brother," she said. "He is elder in the northern settlements. He has married many people, all kinds. He will do it." And he did. Mr. Chen arrived a week later, a quiet man with kind eyes and no apparent reservations about uniting a human and an orc in marriage. They planned the ceremony for the first day of summer, in the clearing behind Zachary's house where wildflowers grew thick. Word spread and Zachary half expected protests or problems, but none came. When the day arrived, nearly 50 people showed up, including the entire crew, Mr. Harrison, and various townspeople. Even some folks Zachary did not know well came, drawn by curiosity or support or perhaps just the novelty of it. Calvin and his followers were notably absent, but Zachary did not care. Kira wore a simple green dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her make, her black hair braided with flowers. She looked nervous and beautiful, her tusks painted with delicate designs in silver that caught the light. When she emerged from the house and walked toward where Zachary waited, his breath caught. She was magnificent. Not despite being an orc, but as exactly what she was, strong and unique and perfectly herself. The ceremony was brief. Mr. Chen spoke about love and courage, about building bridges instead of walls. He had them exchange vows they had written themselves. "I promise to see you," Zachary said, holding both her hands. "Not as what the world says you should be, but as what you are. To stand beside you through whatever comes, to love you with everything I have for as long as I live." Kira's voice shook slightly as she spoke. "I promise to trust you, to let myself be vulnerable, to believe that I deserve happiness and fight for it, to love you not just with my heart but with my courage, my strength, and my hope for the future." Mr. Chen pronounced them married, and they kissed while their guests cheered. Thomas whooped loudly. Daniel threw flowers. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears, and Zachary thought that if someone had told him a year ago that he would be here, married to an orc woman in front of a supportive community, he would have thought them insane. But here he was, and it was real and it was good. They held a celebration afterward, simple food and drink and dancing as the sun set. Kira was stiff and awkward at first, clearly unused to being the center of positive attention. But gradually she relaxed, especially when people came up to offer genuine congratulations and welcome her into the community. "This is strange," she whispered to Zachary during a quiet moment. "People are being nice to me. Get used to it. You are stuck with us now." "I think I can live with that." As the evening wore on and guests began drifting home, Zachary and Kira found themselves alone in the clearing, the last of the firelight casting dancing shadows. "We did it," Kira said wonderingly. "We actually did it. Did you doubt we would?" "Every single day, but I hoped, and for once hope was enough." They danced slowly, no music but the night sounds and their own heartbeats. Zachary held his wife and marveled at how much had changed, how much courage it had taken to get here, how much it had been worth it. "What happens now?" Kira asked. "Now we live. We work, we build, we deal with whatever problems come up, together." "Together," she echoed and smiled. "I like that plan. They stayed in the clearing until the fire burned down to embers, neither wanting to let go of the moment. Finally, as the night grew cold, they walked back to the house hand in hand. Their house now. Their life. Their future. And though the world outside was still complicated, still full of people who would never accept what they were, none of that mattered as much as it once had. Because they had each other. They had people who supported them, and they had the courage to keep choosing love over fear. The months that followed brought their share of challenges. Calvin made one more attempt at causing trouble, spreading rumors about Kira being dangerous, but by then the community knew better. His influence waned until he was little more than a bitter old man shouting into the wind. Zachary's business thrived. He hired 3 more workers, including 2 orcs from a clan to the north who had heard about Kira and wanted to see if the stories were true. Slowly, carefully, he was building something new, a place where orcs and humans worked side by side, where the old prejudices mattered less than ability and character. It was not perfect. There were still incidents, still people who refused to accept the changes. But progress was happening, one small step at a time. Kira bloomed in the safety and acceptance. She started teaching some of the human workers basic orc crafting techniques, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded for generations. She became friends with several women in town, a development that stunned her. And she slowly let go of the fear that had ruled her life, replacing it with confidence and joy. On their first anniversary, Zachary gave her a gift, a small plot of land adjacent to his property, deeded in her name alone. "Why?" she asked, confused. "Because you should have something that is yours, that no one can take away. This land, this place, it is as much yours as mine now." "I wanted it to be official," she cried, which made him panic until she kissed him and explained they were happy tears. They planted a garden on her land, mixing orc and human seeds, creating something new from both their heritages. 2 years after they met, Kira told him she was pregnant. Zachary felt fear and joy in equal measure. A child would be half orc, facing all the complications that came with that status. But it would also be theirs, a living symbol of what they had built together. "We will protect them," he promised, one hand on her still flat stomach. "We will teach them to be proud of what they are, and they will grow up knowing they are loved and wanted." "I know," Kira said, "because I know you, and I trust you with everything." Their daughter was born in early spring, squalling and perfect. She had green-tinted skin lighter than Kira's, tiny tusks that would grow in later, and her father's dark eyes. They named her Sarah after Zachary's mother. The community welcomed her with surprising warmth. People brought gifts, offered advice, treated her as they would any new baby. And though Zachary knew she would face challenges as she grew, he also knew she would face them with the love and support of 2 parents who had already fought those battles. On Sarah's first birthday, they held a celebration in the same clearing where they had married. The crowd was larger this time, over 100 people from the surrounding area. Orcs and humans mixed freely, talking and laughing and sharing food. It was not perfect harmony, there were still tensions, still unresolved issues, but it was progress. Zachary stood at the edge of the gathering, holding his daughter, watching Kira laugh at something Thomas was saying. His wife, his family, his improbable, impossible, perfect life. Thomas came over, a cup of ale in hand. "Hell of a thing you built here, boss." "We built it," Zachary corrected. "All of us, brick by brick, still. 3 years ago, who would have thought? An orc and a human married with a kid, half the town supporting them. Times are changing, not fast enough, but we are getting there." Thomas raised his cup, "To getting there." Zachary clinked his own cup against it. "To getting there." That night, after the guests left and Sarah was asleep, Zachary and Kira sat on their porch. the same porch where she had proposed, where they had dreamed of a future that seemed impossible. "You remember the day we met?" Kira asked. "When I stood at your gate, terrified you would turn me away, I remember. I knew you the moment you looked up, knew you were running, knew you needed help. I just did not know how much helping you would change everything. Do you regret it? Any of it?" He looked at her, this woman who had turned his life upside down in the best possible way. "Not for a second. You are the best decision I ever made." She leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere inside, their daughter slept peacefully. Around them, a community they had helped build was settling in for the night, and ahead of them stretched a future full of uncertainty but also possibility. "I love you," Kira said quietly. "I love you too. Always." They remained there long after the stars came out. Two people from different worlds who had found each other against all odds. And though the path had been difficult and the future remained complicated, they had proven that love could bridge any divide, if you were brave enough to reach across it. In the years to come, their story would spread. Other mixed couples would find courage in their example. Slowly, painfully, the world would begin to change. But on that night, under those stars, they simply held each other and marveled at how far they had come. From that first desperate moment at the gate to this, a home, a family, a life built on choice and courage and stubborn hope. It was not the life either of them had expected. It was better, and it was theirs.